Hi, welcome to Notes from a Drama Watcher, a podcast about East Asian dramas, mostly but not exclusively BL dramas. It's part review, part recap, so there will definitely be spoilers ahead. Let's go! Welcome to episode 2. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Fighting Mr. Second, which is the second season of We Best Love. We'll be discussing episodes 1 through 3. Then Second Chance, episode 2. Yes, I know I said I probably would not continue, but I could not resist. I just want to know what happens with Geno's storyline, as well as the other characters, but mainly Geno. And we'll also be talking about Word of Honor, episodes 6 through 10. So first up, We Best Love, Fighting Mr. Second, Season 2. I actually had to go back. I watched the first episode of Fighting Mr. Second without having seen We Best Love, Season 1. And that's because I had a little trouble getting onto WeTV, but I finally did. So you can go check that out on WeTV. The only thing is, past the first episode, it's only available to VIP members. So you do have to have that membership. Just a little backstory if you haven't seen number 1 for you. Our main leads are Gao Si-de and Jo Shui. They are university students. It is an enemies to lovers story. Enemies really on one side because Gao Si-de actually has feelings for Jo Shui, but Jo Shui has feelings for someone else. Things happen. They eventually get together. We think they will be together forever. As it turns out, Gao Si-de has to take a trip to America because his mother is getting married, so he goes with his mom just to kind of get her settled. He's supposed to be away for a couple of months, but 2 months turns into 2 years. We find this out in episode 7. I'm not sure if that was the storyline that they had to begin with, or if that was just added on because the show became so popular. Episode 7 is only about 10 minutes long, so I think it's something they just added on so that they could get into Season 2. Season 2, which is Fighting Mr. Second, takes place 5 years later. Gao Si-de is now back and he is the CEO of a company. The company has just been sold, and it turns out the representative of the company is coming to visit, and who should walk in but Zhao Shuyi. Zhao Shuyi expresses his displeasure, we'll say, at seeing Gao Si-de again, and he's obviously an angry person right now. And we saw a little flashback in the beginning of episode 1 of Fighting Mr. Second, where Jo Shui had gone on a business trip with his dad to America, and I can't really tell there if he sort of bumped into him by mistake or went purposely to find Gao Si-de, but he sees him in a park with a blonde woman who is supposed to be American. I guess they're in America, and he's holding a baby, and they look like a nice little happy family there. Jo Shui doesn't ask any questions. He just leaves and I guess assumes that that is Gao Si-de's family. And so he's upset. Obviously, he thought they were going to be together. He thought they were waiting for each other. And here Gao Si-de is apparently with a new family and everything. And we saw in episode 7 of season 1 that they had lost contact for 2 years. Gao Si-de was in America for 2 years. I don't know at what point this particular trip where he saw Gao Si-de in the park, I don't know where that falls within that 2-year period. But suffice it to say, there has been a rift and anger, at least on one side, on Jo Shui's side, and we're not quite sure what's happening on Gao Si-de's side, except that he's confused because, they lost contact. Working in the office and witnessing this reunion is Yu Zhenshen, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Gao Si-de's company. And he is actually part of the other pairing of this show. So this basically is what we will see for episodes 1 and 2. It's a very push and pull relationship. Jo Shui claims to hate Gao Si-de. He tells Gao Si-de that he hates him, but you can tell it's really disappointment is really what he's feeling, intense disappointment. If you know from season 1 of We Best Love, you know that Jo Shui lost his mother as a child. So he's already had loss in his life, and I think it makes him like a very closed off kind of person. He appears cold to people who don't know him, and he opened his heart to Gao Si-de, and Gao Si-de just disappeared on him, as far as he knows. And so there was a sense of loss there. And that turned into disappointment. Maybe it did turn into anger. You know, they say love and hate, it's different sides of the same coin. Gao Seda has basically loved Joshi forever, ever since he met him as a child. We learned in season one that he had met him as a child and liked him since then. You know, wanted to be his friend, but obviously in university it became something else for him. He loved him, and he still loves him. You can tell that he wants with all his heart to get back together with Joshi, but Joshi isn't ready for that. Joshi needs an explanation of what happened. So far in episodes 1 and 2, we don't see an explanation from Gao Seda as to what happened between them. Why did he suddenly just disappear from Joshi's life? So there we go. We've got two very hurt people. Joshi, because he finally, for the first time in his life, trusted someone and that person basically broke his trust. And Gao Seda, because he still loves Joshi, wants nothing more than to get back with him and just kind of pick up where they left off. And Joshi is not having it at all, which makes sense because 5 years have passed and they've changed. Things have happened to them. They've had different experiences. You can't just kind of pick up where you left off 5 years ago when in many ways you're different people now. So before I get into episode 3, just want to say a couple of things about episode 1 and 2, the way it was directed. If you look on WeTV on the website, there are a lot of behind the scenes clips, videos. There are interviews and so forth, but there are also behind the scenes videos there. One of the behind the scenes videos that they have on there is actually the filming of, part of that video is the filming of a scene that takes place, it actually takes place in episode 1 and then kind of carries over into just past the beginning of episode 2. I think it's valuable to see that behind the scenes because the way the behind the scenes was filmed, the way Gao Seda was being portrayed there, it was set up a little differently than what the final product in season 2 was. And kudos to the director actually for that, because the way that the one they decided to use in episode 2, that scene, actually to me fits more into their characters. The behind the scenes video, Gao Seda is very self-assured, almost looks kind of predatory in this particular scene, and I don't think at this point in the show that's really him. He's not self-assured. He doesn't know what's going to happen. He knows what he wants to have happen, but he doesn't know if it's going to happen for them, that they're going to get together or not get together. So I think the director made the right choice. Not that I know anything about directing, but I think the director made the right choice in going with the scene the way that he did. We got to see Gao Seda just hurt when Joshi walks away from him, and Joshi just being completely caught off guard because he tried to, bait the tiger, and the tiger responded, and he didn't know what to do in that moment. Also, the director is using the flashback very effectively because for some of them we get to see how lovey-dovey they were before and now they're not anymore, and that you can see that real contrast, and we get to see Joshi just being really emotional in the opening scene of episode 2 as a flashback. And that's also a contrast to his very cold demeanor that he's trying to show to the world. Now, the end of episode 2. Episode 2, Gao Seda winds up going to a bar that his cousin owns. Remember, his cousin, if you saw season 1, his cousin was the doctor at the university. He's back here in season 2 because he's actually part of the other pairing with the chief technology officer. So Gao Seda is in his cousin's bar getting drunk and just decides he's gonna go see Joshi. It makes sense. He always wants to see Joshi, but he's not in his best mind there, and he decides to go to Joshi's house. He says, to bring snacks, but he winds up just breaking down over there and apologizing, or trying to apologize to Joshi, saying he never should have gone to America, saying he's sorry, but still not explaining what in the world happened. And Joshi just is like, tell me what happened. This is a very physical episode. It's a physical couple of episodes, I guess. As I said, Joshi's angry. He does strike out, and in episode 2, when Gao Seda goes to the house, he is trying to kiss Joshi. There's not so much a difference in height between them, but there is a difference in body type. And Gao Seda is just bigger physically than Joshua, and he basically is dragging him into the house, not allowing him to leave. He's trying to kiss him, and there's a scene that you're not quite sure what happens. Gasada wakes up the next morning. He has no clothes on. You're not sure what happened. Some people have interpreted this as an NC scene. They don't show anything beyond them kissing. Before the scene kind of fades away, we do see that Joshi is responding to him and kissing him back. So I'm really not quite sure what happened. I actually think that it may be more likely that he passed out or, got sick and passed out, and maybe that's why he didn't have his clothes on. The clothes got washed. I don't know. We don't see anything. We don't know for sure. What we do know is who shows up in the middle of all of this is Joshi's father. He appears to know Gasada. He's like, what are you doing here, kind of thing. And Joshi is looking between the two of them like, how do you two even know each other? What's going on? And that leads us into episode 3, where some of the things that have been going on come into the light finally, and we get an explanation. Not just us, the audience, but more importantly, Joshi gets his explanation finally. The question, of course, in episode 3 is, does it matter? He got his explanation, but really does it matter? They've been apart for 5 years. Does he want to pick up where they left off? Does he want to just move on? Can he trust again? So definitely a good show to watch. I think I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed We Best Love season 1 also. Season 2, it's a little, rougher. A lot of passion in a negative way. A lot of emotion, anger, sadness. Just all of that mixed in together into one big ball of misery for both characters. The acting was really great. Yu, who plays Zushui, is a rookie actor apparently, which, I'm surprised. He's really good. But, kudos to Sam, who plays Galshada. And on the one hand, with this character, I'm like, just tell him what's happening. Tell him the truth. But on the other hand, as a viewer, I'm really enjoying seeing the angst that Galsada is going through. And we really see that portrayed very well by Sam. The conflict that he feels, the yearning that he feels for Joshi. He just wants to get back together with him. But something is keeping him quiet. Something is keeping him silent, and it's torturing him. And he's really, Sam, the actor, is expressing that very well. I said it earlier, kudos to the director. I've watched way too many of these behind the scene clips, but it's been an education. You got to see the choice he could have gone with and the choice he ultimately decided to go with certain scenes. And just as a viewer, I feel like he made the right choices. In the next episode of this podcast, I'll be talking about episodes 4 through 6 of Fighting Mr. Second. I actually have seen 4 and 5 already. I have not yet seen episode 6. So when I'll be recording for episode 3 of this podcast, it'll be something I have just seen, fresh in my mind. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Second Chance, which is the drama it's set in a high school. This one can be found on Line TV. In episode 1, we were introduced to a whole host of characters. There's a lot of characters on the show. The main ones, though, are Tongfa, Paper, and Chris. Those are the 3 good friends that are like the main ones of the episode. There is some tension going on between Tongfa and Paper in the first episode. The second episode continues more of that tension. There's a lot of kind of looks between them. Tongfa, you can tell already, likes Paper. Paper also has feelings for Tongfa. I'm not sure if he's aware of exactly what Fa is feeling for him. I think he might be, and is purposely not responding to it. We also got to see more about the bullying situation going on in the school with Arthur. If you recall, I spoke about in the first episode, Arthur is the school bully. He's got his 2 cronies with him, bullying people, specifically bullying Jeno. Somehow in the first episode, it comes out that they find out that Arthur has basically been cheating, and he thinks cheating academically, and he thinks it's Jeno that sold him out. Geno's denying it, but he continues in this episode with bullying Jeno. There is the added dynamic that they are ex-boyfriends, and it causes Jeno to, first of all, in the first episode, he says he wants to learn Muay Thai, a form of martial arts. So in this second episode, he does go through on signing up for a class to take martial arts. He wants to learn how to defend himself. What he doesn't know is that one of the people who goes to this gym where he's going to learn Muay Thai is Chris, one of the 3 main friends in the show. Chris is good at Muay Thai. I guess it seems like he goes there every day, according to what some of the other characters said. He goes to the gym every day. And he decides he's going to help Jeno. Now, Chris actually likes Jeno and is not being shy about saying it necessarily. He asks Jeno if he can pursue him at one point. But of course, Jeno has been through so much. He's being bullied by this ex boyfriend of his. So he's not trusting and he doesn't quite know what to make of Chris. I can't even say he's getting over his previous relationship. He's not being allowed to get over the relationship because Arthur keeps torturing him in the school. We do see Paper and Chris and Jeno telling one of the school administrators, or I guess it's a teacher, about the situation because Paper's actually class president, class representative. So I guess he keeps track of what's going on in the school and reports it to the teacher. And he reports that he had seen Jeno being bullied at one point and, is telling the teacher check the CCTV. And they bring Arthur in to talk about it, which is something I have an issue with. I think they do this in American schools. I'm not sure if they still do this, but the idea of having the victim sitting there in front of the person who did this to them, and then you're asking them, oh, did this person really hurt you? Of course, the person is going to be scared. I actually thought Jeno was going to deny it, and he didn't. He said yes. I mean, he didn't say it. He nodded his head, but that took a lot of courage to do that. So I'm glad to see them addressing this in this episode. Arthur gets a suspension. It's kind of a light suspension. He gets a month suspension. Chris goads him a little bit, I think on purpose, and it seems like his punishment is longer. He's suspended until the rest of the term. I'm not sure if they had only 1 month left anyway, though. But it seems like he got a long suspension after being goaded by Chris because he turns around and hits Chris right in front of the teacher, which, tells you right there his severe anger problem. We don't really see Arthur for the rest of the episode. I'm a little concerned that it's gonna backfire in a way. Like, hopefully Jeno is safe now, but Arthur doesn't seem like someone to let go of grudges, and he's got the two cronies working with him. They're still hanging around the school somewhere. They were not brought into the office. So where are they? I don't know. Maybe they'll go after Jeno later. We don't know yet. In the meantime, Chris is trying his hardest to get close to Jeno. Jeno, like I said, may not be ready at this moment for any kind of relationship, but he looks like he's warming up a little bit to Chris, just at least in terms of having a friendship. So that's good to see. I think he still doesn't know quite what to make of Chris. Chris, they kind of present him as this kind of silly person who's always trying to use pickup lines on different people. So you're not quite sure how serious he is, but he looks like he is serious about Jeno. And Chris is like a silly, but I think ultimately kind person, and that's probably exactly what Jeno needs in his life. Again, maybe not in any kind of relationship, but as a friend. We get to see a little more of a varied filming location here. We've got the Muay Thai gym where they're training and a little bit of Jeno's house. His sister does find out from someone else that Chris seems to be interested in Jeno. She doesn't seem super concerned about it, so I guess she also thinks Chris is an okay person. Obviously, she's also concerned because she knows what Jeno has gone through with his ex, so that is a concern. And our episode finishes off just with Paper and Fa on a scooter. Together they're going home, but it's Fa that's actually driving and Paper's behind him, and Paper's kind of like hesitating if he should put his hands on his waist, to hold him. And that's where you see there's some feelings going on there. He's not quite sure what to do, and then ultimately he does decide to kind of loosely hold on to his, I don't even think he's holding his waist, he's holding his shirt, but you can tell he just doesn't know, what to do. It's some confusion going on there. And that was it. This episode was pretty Jeno focused, I feel. And we got a little preview of the next episode, but it was not subtitled, so I couldn't tell exactly what was going on, except that Fa appears to be in a hospital and he's crying his eyes out. So I'm not sure what that means for episode 3. Something very sad obviously is about to happen. I enjoyed this episode. I really like the friendship between Fa, Chris, and Paper. They kind of needle each other, as friends, but at the same time they are helpful towards each other. They're looking out for each other. Paper is like kind of scolding Chris at times because he feels like Chris isn't taking his future seriously. There's an ongoing kind of discussion of what are you going to study in college? What do you want to be? They're at that time in their life and Chris is not sure. He doesn't know what he wants to do with his future, and Paper is worried about him because of that. And I really like the friendship between them. Yeah, it was another good episode. I think I can say with certainty, with a fair amount of certainty, that I will be catching episode 3 as well. I'm just curious what happens for our characters and the Arthur storyline, the Genos storyline. I really hope things don't get worse for him. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for him. And next up, by far and away, my favorite out of these 3 shows I'm reviewing, Word of Honor, episodes 6 through 10. I think this is a favorite for a lot of people. So, episode 5 saw Xiangling safely delivered to his family, Five Lakes Alliance. He's put into the care of second brother and fifth brother of the Five Lakes Alliance. Zhou and Wang Kexing now have completing their tasks, continue to travel together, and they wind up in a scary place, a coffin house, with some strange creatures that they now have to fight off. After making their escape, they now have to treat Zhou wounds. Remember, Zhou is still ill. He's never been well. He's still dying. So he can fight for a bit and then gets into bad condition. And it's made even worse because he's hurt by these creatures. They're called drugmen that they have fought. They have just fought. So in treating his wounds, one of the things that happens is he has some poison on him, or in him, I should say. And Wang Kexing, because Zhou cannot reach it, has to help him out. This is one of the scenes that, as a long-time BL bromance drama watcher, I am so surprised that the censors let this go. I mean, I am just truly shocked. Probably because you see the beginnings, you don't see an action actually occurring, so they let it go through, but still. In previous things, like in Guardian, I haven't finished watching Guardian. As I mentioned in my last episode, I watched it, was stopped from watching it when it was pulled down from online because of censorship, and then it was brought back up, and I didn't get to start watching it again, so I've restarted it. But that wasn't even anything close as far as I know in Guardians. This was just looks, memories, whatever. What happens here in Word of Honor is like a real step up from that. And, we're in episode 6, but you can say since episode 2, Wang Kexing has been flirting. Wang Kexing has been, spouting poetry, which is really just his way of flirting, and the censors have let it go. I'm surprised. I mean, is this a step forward for Chinese BL bromance dramas? Maybe it is. Maybe this is the start of something new. It seems like it's getting more and more popular too, the show itself. So, and now you're seeing all these clips online, the actors sort of promoting the show, etc. And it's being let go. It's being allowed to happen. So maybe things are changing slightly. Or maybe they're just letting them get a ton of money and then they'll pull it down. I hope not. As I said, I'm going to cross my fingers. Let's all cross our fingers together. But hopefully it's the start of something new. There are more BL dramas slated to be shown. There's a channel I watch sometimes called Avenue X, where she talks sometimes about BL dramas, and she mentioned one, I can't remember the name of it, that already had to go back for a review, that had been filmed, that already had to go back for a review because of the censors. So, the censors are there. They're still keeping a close eye on the shows. So I'm not quite sure what happened with Word of Honor. Maybe because there wasn't like a big buzz about it, they didn't notice? I don't know. But, we all benefit from this. Episode 6 is filled with more flirting/fighting between Zhou and Wang Kexing. We learn, at the end of episode 5, while under the influence, we hear Wang Kexing saying Zhou real name, but we're not quite sure what it means. And in the same way here, he doesn't say it to his face, but he's thinking out loud to himself, this is Zhou. He's sure that that's Zhou. We don't know why or how he knows him yet, but for some reason, he does know him. Zhou does not seem to recognize Wang Kexing, though. They also have acquired, during their fight in the coffin house, they've acquired a piece of the glazed armor. Now, the thing is, Zhou could care less about the glazed armor, so it really doesn't mean anything to him, beyond the fact that it's causing people to fight each other. But it means nothing to him. He's just trying to live his life unbothered by anything. And Wang Kexing, I don't know what it really means to him either, besides him just sort of gleefully looking at, people fighting each other over this, what looks like a piece of blue glass. And actually, Zhou just turns it over to him, just gives it to him like nothing, since he doesn't really care about it. Zhou just cares about his traveling and his wine, and glazed armor is not going to help him with either one of those things. Now, this whole conversation that they're having regarding the glazed armor is taking place around a kind of lakeside, and as they're talking about this, they're also, preparing to eat. And I remember in episode 1, I said, this show is available on Viki and on YouTube, and you can look at either one depending on whether you want to see fan subs or the official subs, whatever. But for this, I recommend watching it actually on YouTube, watching episode 6 on YouTube, because The Yoku channel, in honor of gaining 2 million subscribers, actually put out a special version of episode 6 on the channel, in which they added a missing scene that you will not find on Viki. So one thing that I also particularly noticed in episode 6 is that there are a few times where Won Cushing says something to Sojushi and he responds with this exasperated expression. The translations on Yoku, to me there was like no reason for Sojushi to be, exasperated with Won Cushing with whatever was said. So I felt like, oh, maybe something's being lost in the translation, etc. But the channel, the YouTube reactor channel, well, she's not a reactor, but the YouTuber I mentioned earlier, Avenue X, she actually has a few videos where she explains what line is actually being said. If you notice, Sozushi, there's actually a dubber for him, a voice actor in some parts, and also, when Won Cushing says certain things, you can tell it's also been dubbed. And the reason for that is they filmed them saying certain lines, saying certain things, but then I guess it didn't really pass censorship and they had to go and change the line, change what was said so that it could pass through censorship. But because of the way that it was filmed, you can still see their lips moving, and if you can read their lips, you can tell what they're saying. And that's exactly what Mandarin speaking fans have done. Those who are good at lip reading, they've actually looked and seen or figured out what it was that the character actually said. So if you get a chance, I recommend that you go to Avenue X's YouTube channel, where she has those videos showing exactly or telling what people think it was that Won Cushing said in reality versus what was said in the dub for the show. If you think he's flirty already, he's even more so if those original lines had been allowed to go through. So before watching the show, I saw a little bit of a description for the show. I'm not sure if it was an official one. Won Cushing is described as someone who wants to watch the world burn, and I think that is accurate because we see him at the end of episode 6 taking that piece of glazed armor, so she just handed it over to him, and having copies made of it. I think he made like 30 copies or something, so that it will just be distributed out in the world. And of course that's going to cause complete chaos because everyone's trying to get this glazed armor. So now you're going to have people fighting over what is essentially useless pieces of glass. He thinks this is amusing. He's sort of this very apparently nice social guy. He knows it's flattery when he meets new people, but the reality is he can turn on a dime. He can be a vicious fighter, and it's not like Jozushi, when he fights, is just like pretty methodical about what he's doing. He's not feeling anything about it. He's just trying to accomplish his task. At least that's how it seems to me, and that's part of him having been an assassin. But with Won Cushing is like a flip is being switched. His eyes turn like crazy eyes, and he gets mad and he just strikes out. So the question is, which one is the real Won Cushing? Happy-go-lucky guy or almost mad looking guy? That's why he keeps telling Sozushi to show him his face, show him his real face, and Sozushi's turning it around on him, saying like, you show me your true face. Right? Because he hasn't seen it yet. We don't really know it. Well, we know a bit of it. We know at this point he's the leader of the Ghost Valley. In episode 1, you can see part of his face. That's Won Cushing. And for you to be the leader of the Ghost Valley, I don't think you're happy-go-lucky guy. In episode 7, we get to see more of the people who make up Ghost Valley, the other ghosts. They each have their, I don't know if you call it a specialty, but there is happy ghost, lustful ghost. There is a ghost who goes after people who have been unfaithful. But whether they're called happy or whatever their name may be, they are all ruthless. In this episode, we get to see a representative from the Window of Heaven come to the Five Lakes Alliance to try to investigate the whereabouts of the glazed armor. He's at the Yueyang sect, which is where Changling's family is. That's where he's living right now. And if you remember, the Window of Heaven is the organization Sojushi is from. So Representative Han from the Window of Heaven meets Lord Gao, who's one of Chang's uncles, to ask him about the glazed armor, and of course denies knowing anything about it. Shozushi still hasn't left the area. He's just kind of keeping a last look at what's going on in Yoyang City, where Changling is, just to make sure that Changling is safe. But he notices as he's waiting that there's an unusual man kind of standing outside, and after fighting this man, who should show up but Won Cushing? What a miracle! He's appeared out of the shadows to be by Sozushi's side again. Anyway, they wind up hanging out together despite Sozushi is trying to be on his way, and they wind up eating at a restaurant together. And Sozushi looks up and notices Gushang is up there eating with a young man who he doesn't know. And this is where we see, I think for the first time, Won Cushing as overprotective dad / older brother. because he's basically goes like stomping up the steps to see what is going on up there. And the poor guy that she's eating with, Sawening his name, just doesn't know who this guy is, doesn't know what's going on. But he got lay of the land pretty quickly that this is, dad coming up to protect his daughter. Wang Kushing sort of scares him away or convinces him to leave and gets mad, not mad, but talks to Gushang about, hanging out with this guy. It's actually a pretty funny scene between them. The whole relationship between them is just funny. She calls him master, but I mean, it's pretty clear that that is either older brother or slash dad for her, for both of them. And they wind up heading downstairs later and meeting up with Zosushi. Zosushi, by this time in the episode, he's back to his original appearance, which is shocking to Gushan, of course. One Cushing is like patting himself on the back, like, I knew all along that, it was this beautiful guy or this amazing guy. So, of course, since Gushang is like so shocked, she's touching Suzushi's face, in amazement about how he looks. And this is where you see Wang Kushing for the first time, I think. You see the jealousy and the upset. Not upset in a bad way, but it's just really funny. But this is the start of it, because he's going to have other jealous moments later as well. There's not much to say about episode 8. It's just more kind of political maneuvering, more people getting into place to try to find the glazed armor. Still thinking that Chungling has it. Chungling's own family thinks he may have some of the glazed armor, and now we have other people coming in because they hear that Chungling escaped from when his whole household was destroyed, and they think he may have a piece of the glazed armor with him. Because of that, Wang Kushing and Zosushi are still kind of hanging around. Zosushi, even though he completed his task that he promised the old man he would bring Chungling to his family, he's still recognizing all of these dangers that are surrounding Chungling, and because he's a honorable man, he just wants to make sure that Chungling is okay. Wang Kushing is just there to hang around Zosushi, basically. But he also cares for Chungling, you can tell, in his own way. I don't know that it's an honorable thing like in Zosushi's case, but he does care for the boy. You also, not for the first time, but you really see more, even more so, softening of Zosushi towards Wang Kushing. And he still doesn't necessarily really trust him or his motivations, but I think he's trusting that Wang Kushing will have his back, even if he doesn't really know why. And Wang Kushing, we know he likes Zosushi. I mean, he's pretty obvious about that. He's been kind of flirty or whatever, but we see a little more introspection, a little softer feeling, not where Zosushi can see, but we can see it in Wang Kushing's facial expressions. And it's funny because Avenue X, the YouTuber I mentioned before, one of the things she talks about in one of her videos, and I'm sorry I don't remember exactly which one it was, she was talking a little bit about Simon Gong's acting. I don't remember the exact terminology she used. I don't think she said it was like wooden acting, but it wasn't like in the past he had not been in things that were where he was very expressive. And it was interesting to me that she said that, because actually before I saw her video, I was thinking, I actually find Simon Gong very expressive in this show. And it's not big, wild, screaming emotions, but the micro expressions that he has shown so far, I think are very good. And from a viewer, it makes you really look closely to see these movements in his face, to see what he's really feeling. And it shows even more so that even though he seems like he's just letting all his emotion out and letting you know exactly what he feels, and he's flirting left and right, he's still holding a lot of things inside, and you see that in the minute shifts in his expression. So it was interesting to me that she said that, and one of the things she was saying was that I think she was kind of attributing it to the director. Like, it shows this particular cast, this director, everything just gelled, everything came into place for this show. Maybe that's true. It might be true. Although I have to say, I didn't see all of Advanced Bravely, but I saw a good chunk of that show, and I don't think he was bad there either. He sort of a little bit reminded me actually of Wang Kushing, that slyness to that same, in that character as well in Advanced Bravely. I'm not sure. I have not seen him in anything else. I don't know how many other things he's been in, so maybe this has been some kind of issue on other things, but if that's the case, then, the director in this show is doing a wonderful job of making sure that this character really comes through and that he's really showing us these things about this character. Same for Zhang Zhehan, who's playing Zosushi. I don't think she had any she didn't say anything negative about his acting and other things that she's seen him in. He has been in a few other things. He's playing a character that can be very deadpan, like not really showing expression, but he also has those little shifts in expression that we see. It's just that his character is that way overall, right? So it's okay if his expressions are really small and we really have to look. It's more interesting in One Cushing's or in Simon Gong's case, I think, because he's having to play the complete opposite of just being loud and letting it all out by doing those little micro expressions. It's more of a stretch in his case than it is for the Zozushi character. Episode 9, though it seems kind of a slow episode, there's really not much going on. There actually is a lot going on in a sense, because there's a whole discussion of soulmates between Zozushi and One Cushing. Not saying they're soulmates, but just discussing what soulmates are, and it's really causing Zozushi to think about the concepts. And also we see, really for the first time, a kind of rift developing between them because they've got very different ways of thinking. This is not part of the soulmate discussion. This is something that happens later in the episode. There's a difference in their way of thinking, and it causes them to look at the world in very different ways. Zozushi is a noble person at heart. They keep calling him soft-hearted, and I think that's probably true. One Cushing is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a description of him. He wants to watch the world burn. That is kind of how he is. And the decision he made earlier to make those fake copies of the glazed armor is causing a lot of chaos now in the world, that those fake pieces are out. And he's finding it really enjoyable and hilarious. And Zozushi obviously does not, because he knows what it's going to cause to have all these people trying to fight each other over what are essentially useless pieces of glass. And he knows the amount of people that could be hurt or killed because of this. And One Cushing doesn't care. They're strangers to him. He just cares about himself, Gochang, his maid, and One Cushing and Changling. And that's pretty much it. That's all he cares about in the world. But actually something happens here in this episode also that opens One Cushing's eyes to things. For the first time ever, I think he's kind of seeing the consequences of doing something that he thinks is amusing, and it actually winds up hurting people. And it causes an argument between him and Zozushi. They're both feeling really upset. At the same time, it's a good thing for One Cushing to see that his actions have consequences. Not much happens for our main characters in episode 10, Zozushi and One Cushing, because due to the argument, they spend the entire episode separated from one another, each going through their own thing. Zozushi meets someone who he met in an early episode, but someone from his past who he's just having a conversation with and reflecting on his own actions and everything. And we get to see One Cushing in his role as leader of Ghost Valley. And we see that he can really be kind of evil. It's interesting as a viewer to see this dichotomy between him usually being carefree when he's around Zozushi and how he is as the evil leader of the Ghost Valley. So it's an interesting episode in the sense that we get to see them separate from each other and having character development that way instead of just bouncing off of each other as in previous episodes. Another enjoyable few episodes. Now we have to see, how do our heroes get back together again? They're still separated after their argument. This show, I've heard, had a low budget. I can't really tell. It's not something that's super obvious. There's a scene in episode 6 that some people felt had some bad CGI, some bad special effects. It didn't bother me, but if you're someone who cares a lot about that, then you'll maybe get a good little laugh out of that part of episode 6. But that would be the only thing, is that that's where you could see a little bit of a problem with the budget kicked in. Definitely recommend continuing with the show if you're watching and you're up to these episodes, up to episode 10. It's fascinating to see One Cushing's character, especially as leader of the Ghost Valley. How are they going to bring him back in the show? How are they going to bring him back to being a noble person who can stand by Zozushi's side? And actually, Zozushi's not feeling too noble himself, right? He's having memories or thinking back to the things in his past and what got him to where he is today. So obviously, I highly recommend this show. I'm catching it if you haven't seen it yet. And our next podcast will be discussing episodes 11 through 20 of Word of Honor, the next episode of Fish Upon the Sky, and the next episode of Second Chance. Thank you for listening, and stay safe, everyone.